Hey guys, today I'm going to be talking about 3 novellas that I purchased and read and then didn't end up liking even though I thought I would. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, stick around and listen to a novel review. Hello and welcome to the Literature Podcast, a novel review. My name is Seamus, your host, and together we will discuss, dissect, and explore the wonderful world of literature. And the wonderful world of literature is a vast and dense jungle. So let's start making our way through, one book at a time. Hey guys, welcome back. This is a novel review, a book podcast. I am Seamus, the host. And basically, we just talk about books every week. And this week, I've got 3 novellas that I bought and I didn't buy all 3 of them. I bought 2 of them and had one already. And I was really looking forward to reading them. And then when I read them, I was left feeling a bit disappointed, which can happen. I should preface this episode by saying these are my opinions. You might disagree. That is okay. That is fine. If you happen to love these books, my opinion doesn't change your love for the books, so please chill out. But the books are Dostoyevsky, Fyodor Dostoyevsky's White Nights, J.L. Carr's A Month in the Country, and K. Dick's They. 3 novellas, 3 very different novellas as well, and I really do love novellas. Every once in a while I sort of get in like a novella hotspot, and I just read like a whole bunch of novellas. Since these 3, I've read another 3. I'm going to do an episode on them, an episode of novellas that I did like. That's coming next week. But yeah, I thought there's value in talking about why you don't like a book. Maybe it didn't deliver something you were expecting. Maybe it was just crap. Maybe it's the Emperor's New Clothes and everyone else says they love it, but there's actually really nothing to love. So I'm going to talk about that. Let's speak about White Nights, Dostoyevsky first because it's simply on top of the pile. I should preface speaking about this particular story. It's a short story, 60 pages. I didn't know much about it, but I had heard that it had been described as just a beautiful love story. And I wanted to preface this by saying this was the first Dostoyevsky I read since reading the Brothers Karamazov, which I think is probably the main issue as to why I didn't like this book. Because I've gone from a 1,200-page behemoth masterpiece of literature to a sort of lesser-known 60-page story from his catalogue. And it just wasn't very good. I should do a brief overview. It's about a man that's kind of lonely in one way, and he meets a woman that's lonely in kind of a different way. And over the course of a few different nights, I think it's 3 nights in total, they strike up a conversation. He then falls in love. She's kind of interested in this other guy who's not there, but then kind of promises herself to the lonely guy. She then goes back on that because the third guy sort of comes back into the picture and she runs off sort of happily into the sunset, and the lonely guy is left feeling lonely. It's kind of like a tale of, I don't know, he's kind of like a good guy, I guess, in that he's like he wants to serve her in a way and is like yes, like I love you, you're the love of my life. And then she kind of screws him over, even though I don't think it's really screwing him over. But basically, what people were saying about this book made me really excited to read it. And it's one of the main reasons I went to read it. People were saying it's one of the greatest love stories ever. They were saying it is just a gut-wrenching love story. It was one of the reviews. And I was like, oh, fantastic. A gut-wrenching love story, 60 pages, Dostoyevsky. That's 3 pretty good things in your corner to get you into a book. And then it started off quite interesting. I was actually quite interested at the beginning of the story because the unnamed narrator is walking through this city and he prefers to walk through it at night now because everyone who's normally there in the day has gone away. I believe it was for the summer. And he really likes the people of the city, and that when they're happy, he's happy, even though he's not participating directly with these people. And when they're sad, he's sad. And he kind of really gets his energy from this city. And I found it really relatable because when I first moved to London, I obviously had very little, if any, friends. And you sort of start a job and you're not really good enough friends with your work friends yet to be friends. They're just kind of like your work friends. you've met a few people, but they're just like, sort of friends of friends. You don't have like your friends yet. And I remember I left work one day and saw these 3 guys drinking at a pub, and it was summertime, and I was just like, oh wow, like that just makes me really happy, and it's something I can't wait to participate in myself. This is not a sob story about me. I've got friends now. I'm very happy. Not that I was ever unhappy, but it was more just like I can understand how a lonely person could draw their energy from other people within the city that they're existing in. And so I really liked the story at the beginning. I thought it was super interesting. And then I don't know. I don't think it was that great a love story. I don't know if I'm bringing too many modern sentiments to the tale, because really, to sum it up incredibly poorly and briefly, he walks up to a girl and is kind of like, you're cute. And then she's like, yeah, you're kind of cute too, but I'm interested in this other guy. And then 2 days later, she's like, look, you're still cute, but like this guy's turned up and now I'm going to go off with the guy that I was actually in love with. And it's kind of like, that's the end. And if that happened to you in the modern day, you'd be like, yeah, sweet, no worries. Like, go off with the guy you love. That's fine. And that's essentially what happens in this story. But it's just like, it's that idea of like you meet someone and then like immediately declare your love for them. And then that's like the rest of your life decided, which I know it sort of happens a lot in these older books, and it does make it a sort of a nice love story, but like a gut-wrenching love story. It takes place over 4 days. It wasn't that gut-wrenching, I don't think. It felt pretty reasonable the whole time. Yeah, I just didn't particularly love it. And another thing I will say is a lot of people say this is a great introductory to Dostoyevsky. A lot of people use this to introduce other people, which again could be another issue that I faced is, again, coming from Brothers Karamazov, probably his most, or one of maybe the 2 most accomplished works with Crime and Punishment. To then go to this shorter story is just not the way to do it. So yeah, I was kind of left feeling a bit underwhelmed by White Nights by Dostoyevsky. That is novella number 1. Novella number 2 is J.L. Carr's A Month in the Country. I picked this up because it looked really nice. It looked like a really beautiful sort of summer read, and it is summer right now in London. And so I was kind of like, yeah, I'd love to be sort of in a small town, living that sort of really country life. It looked like a beautiful little story. It's about a guy that's returned from World War I. He's got PTSD, and his job is to uncover an artwork that has been covered up in a church. And what I was expecting was this kind of story of the cathartic nature of art mixed with sort of like small town living in the summertime as well, like a really, again, like a trio of just good things coming together to deliver a really nice, wholesome story. And by all accounts, it is technically that, but it just didn't hit, I think, the right areas for me. I actually stopped this at 50%, at 50 pages in. It's 100 pages long. And was like, I am just not liking this at all. And then I went online to read a few reviews of it because I was like, what are people saying about this book? Like, am I, being crazy? I always do that when I'm not liking a book, is I go online to see what are other people saying about it. Because if everyone's saying it's really terrible, you might not feel as crazy. But if everyone's like, no, this is a masterpiece, and you're like, oh, it's just not vibing with me, maybe there's something wrong with me. Alas, I don't think there's something wrong with me. It's called a preference. Get used to it. But I am glad that I stuck it out for the second 50 pages. I think they were sort of much stronger than the first 50. I think something I didn't quite enjoy was it's a month in the country. And to be fair, I think the job technically would only take a month to uncover this artwork. So that sort of tracks well. But I also think for these small town reads, a month just feels too brief to be there. A month to sort of settle into a new town, to get to meet everybody, and then sort of live a small country town life, to be invited out to various dinners with the vicar's wife and stuff like all these small things that you expect to happen in these small timey books. A month just seems too brief because it feels like it should be like a week or two to get settled and like everyone like notice you in the town as you're walking to buy your bread in the morning. And then it's like third week you get invited to your first dinner and you feel happy. And then the fourth week it's a party and then it sort of rolls from there. So I feel like a month just feels a bit too brief to sort of embed yourself in the fabric of the town, which, I mean, again, I understand for the sake of the story, a month is probably all you would have needed to uncover the artwork, but it just didn't hit that depth. I didn't get enough landscape depiction or description. I didn't get enough catharsis with the uncovering of the art. It just seemed to be this sort of routine thing that he went through, and he was almost constantly interrupted by various people coming to say hello, and I didn't get enough of the relationship between the PTSD and the art itself, which I was really looking forward to. I will say there was some lovely moments. I've got a quote that I'll read. This is not a quote, but I love sort of reading these elder books and getting a taste of what the language was like. So this is someone else who suffered PTSD, and he says, "Well, what are we standing around here for?" He said, "Come over and I'll brew up." And I had never heard that term before, brew up. And you can sort of tell what it means, but in this context, it means to eat breakfast. Which I love, and I've never heard anyone say I'll brew up for you, which is kind of cool. So that's one of those really nice things. But there was a really nice quote. There was quite a few really nice quotes. It's written quite well. Like I said, I just found the story a bit lacking, but there was this really nice quote about sort of looking back upon those years, and it reads like this. "Ah, those days. For so many years afterwards, their happiness haunted me. Sometimes listening to music, I drift back and nothing has changed. The long end of summer, day after day of warm weather, voices calling as night came on and lighted windows pricked the darkness, and at daybreak the murmur of corn and the warm smell of fields ripe for harvest. And being young. If I'd stayed there, would I always have been happy? No, I suppose not. People move away, grow older, die. And the bright belief that there will be another marvellous thing around each corner fades. It is now or never. We must snatch happiness as it flies." And so you can see that's like a really beautiful quote. It's a really nice way to sort of look at your life, in that, you can always be searching for something, but if you're not grabbing it at that moment, it could just pass you by and you may never get another chance. So seize the moment, seize the day, carpe diem. So yeah, it just left me wanting a bit more country, wanting a bit more relaxation, wanting a bit more of the natural landscape, wanting a bit more of this relationship between the PTSD and the cathartic nature of art, and uncovering this art and what that would have actually done for him. And I just wanted a bit more. Maybe it was too brief a story in that it was a month long, but also only 100 pages. As Carr clearly has a strong command of writing and the English language, because that passage was incredibly beautiful. So yeah, just another one that left me wanting a little bit more than it offered. A Month in the Country by J.L. Carr. And now the last novella that let me down this week is They by K. Dick. This one hurt a lot more than it should, and I think that's because I expected a lot more from it. I wanted a lot more from it. I think it's got an incredible foundational idea behind it, that it could have been a really great story, and I think she just missed the mark a little bit. At least for me, she missed the mark a little bit. It does have a decent little following behind it, so it probably is just my issue more than anything. It actually has a super interesting backstory as to how it sort of came back into reprint. It's the man at the bookshop actually told me this as I was buying it. It was released in 1977 and then did not sell well. This was traditionally a difficult time for sort of sci-fi, dystopian fantasy fiction, because up until then it was kind of, not up until then, but it was in a period of thinking that these are all just kind of like silly stories that happen, and it was all sort of fluffy and happy-go-lucky. And then things like Star Wars started coming out, a bit more serious. The Thomas Covenant Chronicles, which I did 3 episodes on, so suddenly the sphere changed and literature was suddenly serious. And like in the Thomas Covenant Chronicles, it opens with pretty much the rape of a young girl, and it was suddenly like a really shocking thing. And so this came out at the same time, and it sold really poorly. And within 2 years, it was actually out of print. K. Dick, of course, is a very accomplished author. So to have a book out of print that quickly is a bit disappointing. And when the publishing house was like, this isn't selling that well, she was like, well, maybe you should sell it better then. And I kind of love that idea of just, try harder. So it went out of print, and then by chance, I think it was in 2004, he told me, it might be at the frontier, but in the early 2000s, a publicist, I believe it was in a secondhand bookshop and found a ratty old copy of the book. And apparently the pages were falling out and it was quite beat up to the point that she couldn't even get a new copy because it had been out of print since, I guess, 1979. And essentially she read it, enjoyed it, rediscovered it, and then acquired the rights and published it, which is very kind of cool. And I kind of loved that, and that sort of won me over that little bit more. The story is about these characters that are just known as them and they and those sort of far off beings over there. And these people have kind of waged a war on individualism and artistic creation and all these things. And it's quite a dystopian novel where you are, what's the word? Hunted, I guess, loosely hunted for being creative and artistic and individualistic, and that is kind of where the story starts. And so I was expecting this really interesting story of like the defiance of art versus these crazy idealists that want to bring down the artistic nature of the world and conform to a idea of what they think society should be. It opened up really strongly. I thought it opened up quite strongly. It's really sort of absent and ethereal, like it's an unnamed narrator telling the story. And I thought, oh yeah, now we're really cooking with this story. We're doing quite well. And the absence of it was quite beautiful in the first chapter. And then, I don't know, there was sort of no building upon that absence in a way that you don't really know what's going on. And then you realize that I believe it was 9 chapters in this book are actually not really connected. They're kind of 9 individual stories that are told. And because it's an unnamed narrator, you technically don't ever know if you're with the same narrator, with the same person. There are sort of the occasional thread through that make you think you are with the same person. There's the reference to a dog. And so you kind of just blindly believe that you're following the same narrator, but some of the stories are vastly different from what you're expecting. And I think it's an interesting idea to make the story quite absent and abstract as well. But something I grew to dislike was the absence and the abstractedness of it, because I wanted to know what was going on. I understand the nature of being abstracted and quite absent because that creates this feeling of dislocation, but it actually dislocated me from the text itself. It didn't bring me into the story more. And I found that kind of removed me from the story in a way that I stopped enjoying the story, because I didn't need to be dislocated from the artists in this story that are struggling to survive. I wanted to connect with them. I didn't want to not know their names and feel dislocated and removed from their experiences. I think anyone coming to this book would want to be involved in those aspects. You want to understand the dislocation that these artists feel from society, given that they're sort of now hunted and being haunted by these mysterious characters that are coming for them in the shadows. And I think that, to me, just made it really difficult to stay connected to the story and maintain motivation throughout. I would have loved, I don't know what I would have loved, but I would have loved something more. I'm not saying an unnamed narrator can't work, because Cormac McCarthy's The Road from 2005, 2006, that's an unnamed father and son. But all through that story, you are really connected to the father and son. You are emotionally there with them, and they're quite removed from society, and that they're trying not to succumb to the cruelty and the wickedness that has taken over the land. They're trying to, I guess the father's trying to preserve this child as a thing of beauty, and it's kind of trying not to taint the child in a way that the horrors of the world might have if the child had been left alone. And I was expecting something similar to that, I guess, in that I really wanted to connect with these people, and then I just found I couldn't connect because there was nothing to really tether me to them or them to me, because I never really got to know them. And like I say, it's a difficult story because it was in a time when these kind of vast shakeups were needed to sort of kick the genre back on track. But I think it just missed the mark for me in a way that removed me from the story that little bit too much, where I didn't enjoy it. There were still some good pockets, there were still some good chapters, but all in all, just missed the mark for me, which is a huge shame, because I was really looking forward to that. And I mean, K. Dick's writing is really good. I think she nailed it almost too good, this this ethereal kind of absent nature to her storytelling. I think she nailed it too good because I did not feel connected to it at all. So that was K. Dick's They. So that was 3 novellas that I bought and really thought I'd like and didn't end up loving as much as I thought I would. Next week, I've got 2 novellas that I bought and ended up really loving, so check back in next week for that. Hopefully it's a bit more of a positive episode if you found this a bit negative. If you would like to like and subscribe, I would really appreciate that. 5-star reviews are also greatly appreciated. I mean, when wouldn't they be appreciated? So thank you so much for that, guys. Thank you so much for listening. If you've listened this far, I think it's time to end this episode. So today, to take us away, one of the testimonials from A Month in the Country, Dr. Johnson's dictionary, and it says this beautiful, simple line: a novel, a small tale, generally of love.